Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning back into our Judges in the Community interview series. I'm Vera, a current research apprentice with the BJI, and with me today to share their amazing fellowship program for the young people in their community is Magistrate Judge Diana Quiroga and Federal Judge Diana Saldaña, joining me all the way from the Southern District of Texas. Hello, judges. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good
Thank
afternoon.
you so much for being here and supporting our program. Before we dive right into your project, would you mind just sharing with us who you are, where you sit, and some more details about yourselves?
Hi, so my name is Diana Saldaña. I'm a federal district court judge here in Laredo, Texas. I've been a district court judge now for 11 years. And before that, I was a federal magistrate judge for 5 years, also here in Laredo, Texas.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Hello, I am Diana Quiroga. I'm a federal magistrate judge. I'm privileged to be in the same courthouse as District Judge Saldaña. I have been a magistrate judge for over 10 years and in our hometown of Laredo.
Thank you so much. So would you mind telling us all about the program you started in Laredo, what it's called, what it is, and where it began?
So we are in Laredo, Texas, which is a community south of San Antonio. We are part of the Southern District of Texas, but our community borders Mexico. We have the Rio Grande River, which separates Laredo from Nuevo Laredo. And, I've been, like I said, I've been here as a judge for a good amount of time, and you get to know the members of your community and kind of the needs of the community. We have a very heavy criminal docket here, and it can be challenging because you see a lot of brokenness. So you see a lot of what causes people to break the law. And we have addiction issues, we have mental health issues, we have limited resources. And so kind of doing that for, as long as I've been doing it and for as long as Judge Song has been doing it, you kind of have this desire to make a difference, to have a positive impact on your community and to ensure that the youth of our community is able to have the opportunities to go on and get an education and to become lawyers if they want to be lawyers. And so one day I was reading a publication that highlighted a program from Boston, Massachusetts, and the federal courts there in Boston have a similar program where they bring in high school students into the courthouse and have a fellowship program. And so when I read about that program, I actually I hit forward immediately to Judge Quiroga and told her, read the article. We need to do something like this in Laredo. Laredo deserves this program. And so that's really the way that the conversation started. And this was probably 2 years ago. We are, like I said, we sit here in Laredo. It is a very busy division, and we have a really high criminal docket. And so it was something that I was hoping we would be able to do at some point. And we started conversations, and then Judge Song, as luck would have it, knew somebody in Boston. So then Judge Song, if you want to tell them what you did.
Yes. So as Judge Song mentioned, once we had the dream, we needed to figure out how to bring it to fruition, how to bring it to life. And thankfully, I had some connections at the courthouse in Boston. And so I was able to connect us, Judge Saldaña and myself, with the judges and the staff at the clerk's office who helped to run the program so that we could learn what's the infrastructure required to set up something where you have interns coming to the courthouse on a paid fellowship, okay, and have a program, like a program, not just ad hoc, but have some kind of curriculum around which to build a fellowship program for these high school interns. we also had some unique challenges here in Laredo, because unlike the circumstances in Boston, where you have large law firms with many attorneys involved in the federal bar, we have a much smaller community. We don't have the kind of large law firms that you would find in a city like Boston. So we had to understand what local resources we'd had and how we could mobilize the local bar to do that. And Judge Saldaña is such a great leader in rallying people behind a cause, that even with the small community of attorneys that we had, we were able to rally the attorneys and rally the school districts. All of the school districts, public and private, participated in this program.
Wow, it sounds like it really found its wings and spread quickly, it must have been so amazing to watch your dream become a reality that way. And when that started happening, were the impacts on the community immediate? How did you watch these students grow, or any stories that come to mind?
Oh yeah, we actually we started planning for a summer June 5th start date. I think it was in March. Was it March, Diana?
Yes.
It was in March. And so this is, kicking off an application process with an essay, also interviewing the candidates, meeting with the school districts, meeting with the superintendents, meeting with the counselors, talking to them about the vision of what the type of student that we were looking for, and really relying on the school district and the counselors to identify and to help submit a limited amount of students, because we expected that there would be a lot of interest in the program, but we didn't have time to interview hundreds and hundreds of kids for the program. And so really relying on the school districts, relying on the counselors, and at the same time, our association is putting together a gala where they are then raising funds so that these interns or these fellows can get a stipend. And that was an important part of this vision that we had, because we were looking for students who would probably be working because of their family situations. These are students who are having to work, having to help provide for the family. We were looking for kids who did not have a lawyer in the family, or didn't know any lawyers, and who really needed a mentor. So a lot of single parent household students, and kids who were curious and who wanted to learn, and kind of had that desire and that drive that the counselors could see, and really could benefit from having a mentor. And it was amazing that we were able to get it off the ground, but it was a team effort, and a lot of just different individuals who had really the same dream and the same desire. Kind of it all came together, and the Bar Association was putting together their gala, which was very successful, and Judge Song and I really brainstorming and trying to come up with the curriculum, and going through the applications, and coming up with a committee, working on the curriculum, and then getting ready to welcome these students. So we ended up with 22 high school students from across our community. We have two school districts, one private school district, and then a fourth school district that's based out of the university here. Mm-hmm. So we had kids from every single school district and every high school come to the courthouse, and the effects were immediate. I mean, we have had such a positive response from the community and from these students. I mean, we were able to see it immediately.
Yes.
Judge Song, I don't know if you have any.
Yes, I taught one of the classes for the students, and just Saldaña was involved with the students like every day. So we were interacting with the students daily. And from little things like who needs a bus pass, what do they want to eat for breakfast, because we were feeding them breakfast and lunch and snacks. Just Saldaña was doing runs to get food for them. And we were doing, from the little to the big things, to the big things, such as a lot of the students, because they came from backgrounds that are mostly single mother households, some of them with, kind of broken families. They came ready to learn, but also with some, personal struggles that we were fortunate to be here for them and learn from them about them just as much as they were learning from us. So what was so enriching about this project is not only just the knowledge that they gain, the substantive knowledge about courts, how probation services works, how they could one day maybe become a lawyer, but also for them to be exposed to adults who felt that they matter, and to invest in them, in their personal lives, in their personal growth, and have that mentor relationship. And I know that's one of the things that both Jocelyn and I treasure the most, what we took away from this program, even after it ended at the end of the 6 weeks.
That's something I was really curious about, because of course the impact on the community is, obvious. I mean, these kids' lives have just grown so much just from having that experience and being welcomed into a space that can often feel so closed off. But for you two, being so involved and clearly so passionate about it, what did you take away, and how have you been impacted personally?
Yeah, it was life-changing. I will tell you that. The entire, time that I've been a judge, a magistrate, and a district court judge, it has been the most rewarding thing that I have ever done. These kids were like my children. And, you just can't help but love and to want to give and to want to give. And so we had surveys for them every week to see what worked, what didn't work, what did they want to eat, what did they want to try. We ended up taking them out to have sushi. A lot of them had not had sushi. There was, a chain restaurant that a lot of them wanted to eat from. So we brought food in from that place. And, that we had, when we had these, things come up where we thought that they needed help with just knowing how and learning how to deal with life, the challenges that they were already dealing with, and it kind of just revealed itself. I think during the first 2 weeks, we reached out to some local mental health organizations, and they came in and did some group counseling and offered individual counseling. We reached out to a local yoga instructor who came in and did a yoga class with them. We had a coordinator who was an artist. And so then we decided to have them do a painting project. And so we shifted, we pivoted, we kind of grew with them. The program grew with them. It was really just phenomenal. The outcome, in the end, the day, Friday was a day, an off day for them. And it was really for us to try and regroup. But half of the kids would come in on Friday anyway. It was a safe place. It was a place where they had food. It was a place where they had air conditioning. And so then we realized that this was really like a home. There was so many tears that were shed as we started getting close to the end, them not wanting it to be over. So it was very evident that we changed their lives. We impacted their lives. You know, so many of them came in here not really knowing, you know, their potential, and not realizing how much the community wants them to succeed. And they left knowing that, and they told us, you know, I now know that I matter, and that I can go on to college, and I can go on to law school if I choose to do that, and just left with these dreams. I just finished writing a letter of recommendation for a young woman who is applying to a program in DC, and just all of these, you know, that they're just their dreams are so much bigger now after this program.
Wow. What about you, Judge Quiroga? Anything in particular that you find most meaningful?
I think as much as you know, we touched their lives and they touched our lives, it was just so inspiring to see the community come behind them as well. You know, I think for Judge Saldaña to have created this forum, right, where all this like positive and aspirations from teachers, counselors, you know, invested adults could concentrate and focus our efforts to bring at least, you know, this class of 22 young people and see them grow. And so we had federal prosecutors, federal public defenders, private attorneys, school officials, who all rally, you know, around the students during the summer, coaching them. The students took classes that prepare them to have a mock trial, and on the last day, their graduation project was to do that mock trial. And it was not an easy case. You know, it's a case that's based on facts that attorneys, federal prosecutors use at their training school. And so this was no easy project for them. This was a very challenging project. And so the students took it on, and they had coaches, the attorneys, the public defenders. And so seeing, as Judge Saldaña mentioned, just a group of adults who invested in these young people and instilled them with confidence that they could dream on, and that the options that they had were just limited by their dreams.
Wow. Yeah, the impact that I'm hearing it's so immense and inspiring. I really hope that programs like these can continue to spring up around the country, just like you were inspired in the Boston courthouses. And logistically speaking, if people do feel intrigued or looking to explore their own options, what advice do you have? You know, what were the successes, the failures, the things to work on in the future? And how can other judges start to sow their own seeds of change?
Well, we did not want to recreate the wheel. And so we literally asked Boston to send us everything that they had, the way their calendar looked, how they kept track of the students getting paid, like literally everything that they could send us. They sent us emails from their the instructors of what the vision of the class was and what was being taught. And really, you know, the best advice I think that Judge Dean told us is just, you know, just have fun with it. Like you know, this is your program. Like you can, you know, create it. No one's going to know if you take something off or put something on. And so we had, you know, I had all of these. I think Judge Song and I both, you know, we wanted, you know, these 4 core classes, if you will. And so we had the classes, and we had a lot of speakers come in as well. I mean, we had our county judge came in, the congressman for our area came in and spoke to them. We had the U.S. attorney come in and speak to them, the federal public defender come in to speak to them. And so, and like I said, after every week, we would have a survey, what worked, what didn't work, what did you like, you know, what would you like to see more of? They actually went the chambers of federal judges and state judges. So we reached across to our state counterparts and asked them to be a part of it as well. And so, you know, we were very ambitious, I think, if you will, because for this first one. And I think we realized that they are high school students and that there are these other skills that we can help them develop that are not necessarily going to come out of a classroom. And so, like what I talked about earlier, that, you know, just being able to take care of themselves, like self-care, being able to balance not a budget, but to be able to know how to use their money wisely, you know, saving money, like these other skills that I think we realize that we want to continue to focus on and maybe not have as much classroom time. And they bonded, you know, the 22 bonded and really, I think, made lifelong friendships because they're not all from the same schools. They're from high schools from all over the community. So there were a lot of lessons, but I think the first one is, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of our documents, we have our application, you know, that we'd be happy to share. You know, if somebody wants to start a program, we both, you know, would love to sit down and talk to any other judges who are, you know, looking to start a program like this. And you really do have to cater it, I think, to your community the way that we did.
I agree with Saldaña that you have to take stock of your local resources and also be in contact with the schools, you know, with, you know, where they are, you know, in terms of what kind of students they're sending to you, and learn. We learned a lot actually from what Saldaña is saying about our students, and not only from weekly surveys about kind of like, you know, their evaluation, you know, weekly evaluations, but we also had a lot of information about them because we had partnered with the school districts, and so we wanted to take stock as to what are the needs of this particular class. And so just like our program for next year, it may not be the same as the program for this year. And I think just to give yourself room for the program to be dynamic. You know, it's not a set curriculum that has to happen every year the same way, but to take a look at what kind of students you have, what are the volunteer opportunities that lawyers will be able to engage in for a particular year, you know, what's maybe on our judges' calendar too for that particular summer. And so think about how the program can be individualized each year around some core foundations or some core, you know, goals. And I think, you know, it'll just be, as Judge Stain said, you know, fun, you know, fun for you because you will be able to react and respond to the unique needs of that particular class.
Mm-hmm. So staying flexible is really important. And I think I heard you talk a lot about being able to, not being afraid to lean on the community, knowing that you're also giving back. And I think it's just those back and forth interactions that courthouses can have with the people they serve that just make programs like this so beautiful. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experience. And I think you're going to inspire a lot of people. And that means a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate everything that you've shared and what you've built from the ground up. It's incredible.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.